Let the sun shine upon this Lord of Cinder.
Hey, it's me, Wailed. The Soul series is packed with strange and creative weapons, but in Bloodborne, one stands out as one of my favorites, the Amygdala Arm. It's literally the severed limb of a great one. And that got me thinking, Bloodborne has more than just this one weapon that's a piece of a great one. So, here's my question. Can you beat Bloodborne as a great one? Or at least using only pieces or parts of a great one? So, here are the rules. I can only use weapons or items that are in any way, shape, or form part of a great one. No consumable items of any kind, except for blood vials and quicksilver bullets. No online assistance. No summoning, no chalice glyphs for the chalice dungeons, and no game manipulation of any kind. I like my challenges to be easily replicated by any viewer. For me, half the fun is figuring out how to get the tools you're allowed to use. It's about the journey, and no journey is perfect. I start by making the wonderful Amy D. Gala, and for the origin, I go with the Violent Past, for its solid strength and just a bit of arcane to work with for later. And with that, the nightmare begins. So this may seem very unprofessional, but we do have some major problems to take care of. First, the weapons I need are buried deeper into the game, and the first viable one is only available until 3 bosses, that being the Cleric Beast, Father Gascoigne, and Vicar Amelia. So to deal with this, I push straight forward to the weapon without any detours, but I've also added penalty rules to appease the challenge run gods. Here they are now. They are no weapon upgrades until Amelia, +3 is the max, only the trick form of my weapon's moveset, starter hunter attire only, and a level 15 cap on my stats. I awaken the clinic and immediately head to the Hunter's Dream to grab the Hunter's Axe for its strength scaling. I toss the blunderbuss into the storage and set out into Yharnam. I quickly meet Eileen to start her questline, this madman's knowledge from the rats down below, and now I can start leveling up at the Doll. Here I discover the big guys can climb ladders. That's kinda weird. Let's just move on. The plan is simple. Take out the Cleric Beast and Father Gascoigne to unlock the Hunter Chief Emblem. This will give me a shortcut to Vicar Amelia. I'm leaving the blood-starved beast alive for now. It's the tougher fight, and let's be honest, no one's gonna cry over me skipping the optional Cleric Beast. Before Amelia, I upgraded the axe to +3, since no items like Numbing Mist means her healing could get out of hand. At level 15, with only the trick weapon attacks, this fight drags on for a full 6 minutes. That is double the amount of time for the Cleric Beast, so I hope my suffering has appeased the challenge run gods. Finally, as I claim the blood-drunk eye, this run can finally get into motion. I take the Amygdala Express to the DLC and run past everything until I reach this one specific cave. Running to the back of it, I grab the first weapon we need of the run and whatever materials I find making my grand escape. So, here it is, the first weapon of the challenge, the Amygdala Arm, and its cool and disgusting moveset. Its base form works as a club-like weapon. I call it the chicken wing because it looks like one. With quick and heavy slams, it seems like it'll stagger most average-sized foes. Now, for the fun part. When activating the arm's trick form, it makes this fleshy sound, and it has this whip scythe movement. Swinging this weapon in any way will result in sweeping attacks. It does a vertical swing while running forward, and has a full 360 move when doing a light charged attack while running. One interesting note I found from Bloodborne Wiki is that the arm's arcane damage is only triggered when it's in its tricked form, which means in its mace form, it's doing nothing but strength damage. So the first thing I do is I quickly upgrade this weapon to +4 with all the materials I've gathered, and I make my way to Hemwick Lane, ready to test this bad boy on the witches. I used it in its club form and slowly bashed the witches. Man, I wish this thing had a follow-up attack. But after a few more bashes, I sent them to New Game Plus. With that, I grabbed the Blood Gem tool and started beefing up this arm. I spent the Blood Echoes mostly on vitality and strength, with a bit of arcane in there for later purposes. Then I went back to Yharnam to clean up a few things. First off, I went to Odin Chapel to quickly help Eileen with Henrik, keeping her quest moving along. Then I talked to Ariana and sent her to Odin Chapel for later purposes. Let's head to Old Yharnam real quick to clear it out. First, I say hi to Jura and send him over the ledge, as we do here. Then I move on to the blood-starved beast. The first fight was fairly standard, though I had to stay on my toes more without the ability to cure poison. The arm's reach proved very helpful for keeping my distance, and even when the poison did set in, I was able to keep the pressure until the beast went down. Then, I decided to go for a walk past 9 PM and get myself abducted, finding myself in early Yargul. I quickly grabbed my favorite rune, the Moon Rune, which increases more blood echoes earned. Next, I faced off against Dark Beast Parl. Nothing too unusual happened, though I pulled off this weird looking visceral attack, and ended up finding myself just focusing on his legs, keeping him grounded. Now I make my way through the Forbidden Woods, and before heading deeper into the snake-infested lands, I make a detour to a cave that gives access to the back of the clinic in Old Yarnum. I run through it quickly, not wanting to bother anyone. Not yet anyway, and receive the Canehurst summons. I then continue my way through the Forbidden Woods, stopping by to say hi to the Firebomb Academy, collecting more upgrade materials, bringing my weapon to +6, and then setting this beast on his way to the clinic. Then I make my way to the Shadows of Yarnum. The first attempt was very rocky because I tried using the 360 attack to damage all of them at once. This led to my eventual downfall, so on the second attempt, after nearly falling into the same practice twice, I focused on using the arm in its club form and just found myself boxing each shadow into a corner, laying into him. I mean, look at this. He can't do anything. While fighting the last shadow, I made a funny discovery. Turns out, after a charged attack in its club form, there's an extra follow-up move where I pull the weapon back out of the ground, dealing an upward slam, causing more damage. This would have been good to know earlier, but I can't complain. Before going forward towards Bergenworth, I decided to take a detour back towards Hemwick Lane and use the Canehurst summons to go to Castle Canehurst. I proceed to run through the location due to all the women yelling at me, and finally reaching Martin Logarius. Currently, with my weapon at +6, I wanted to see how far I'd get against him. And it's painful. I know if I'm persistent enough, I can definitely beat him, but with time and precious blood vials being wasted in every loss, I was willing to put Martin on hold for a bit. I feel it's time for me to obtain my second weapon of this challenge. I make my way to Bergenworth and quickly get inside, heading up to the top floor to open this chest, which holds the wrong item. Yeah, I've got my hunter's tools mixed up. Hold, please. Okay, now, with the tonsil stone in my inventory, this fellow Amygdala will help me get a ride to where I must go. The lecture building, specifically the first floor. Here, after rummaging through all these classrooms, I find what I've been searching for, the Augur of Ebrietas. Which isn't working, because I don't have enough arcane. Great. Clearly I'm good at planning this stuff out. Well, with the Moon Rune, I now have a very good reason to go to the Nightmare Frontier. I quickly make my way through it, hunting down everything. But not just the monsters, but the hunters, and the Amygdala too. Oh yeah. Is it funny to say the fight against the Amygdala was easy because of the Amygdala Arm? Say that 5 times fast. With the arm's long reach and wide sweeps, I was able to consistently hit its head and arms, dealing constant and massive damage. I feel this fight took the term "stop hitting yourself" to a whole new level. And speaking of levels, I now have enough arcane to wield the Augur. The Augur of Ebrietas is a hunter's tool that appears to release tentacles. But the interesting part is that these tentacles are part of the Great One, Ebrietas. In other words, this tool literally summons a portion of a Great One, meaning I'm using the part of a Great One, thus meeting the challenge requirements. When offensively used, these tentacles can also function as a parry. And with that, I finally return to Martin Logarius. Having access to the parry was a huge advantage here, allowing me to hit him from behind. At one point, I even managed to parry him and followed up with a visceral attack, completely skipping him out of his buff phase. Pretty satisfying. And with all that, I was able to bring him down with one final hit. Good riddance. Now I've returned to Bergenworth, and for once, I'm excited to face off against Rom, the Vakis spider, because I want to see what this weapon can do against those little spiders that make this fight so annoying. With the arm's wide swings, it was able to quickly wipe out every horde of spiders Rom would dish out, leaving only Rom in its simple moveset. This is really satisfying, like I mean it. And with that, with Rom being able to do nothing more to really hurt me, I take it out. And with that, the moon turns red, or it's revealed to be red, whatever the lore says, you know. Either way, it's time for Yargul proper. I make my way through the area, first grabbing the upper cathedral key, and about halfway through Yargul, I decided to shake things up this run by going to the upper cathedral earlier than I usually would. Here, I grabbed the blindfolded cap to complete my character's church choir look, and then I grabbed the make contact emote. Moving forward, I fight the Celestial Emissary. I made it a bit rough on myself because I mostly goofed around with the arm's 360 attack trying to take out the little Celestials. It's fun, I can't help it. But quickly, I decided to lock in and quickly dispose of the big fella. One big slam and bam, he's done. Now we go on to handle Ebrietas, Daughter of the Cosmos. For anyone wondering, this is the same Ebrietas that I used to summon my tentacles. Isn't that funny? I'll be honest, this is the earliest I've ever fought Ebrietas, and it shows. Badly. So, after these many deaths, I took my lesson from Myron and decided I'd come back right before I start the DLC with more levels and a stronger weapon. So, I finished making my way through Yargul, grabbing more blood chunks to get my weapon to +9, and making my way to the one reborn. I found myself quickly smashing the bell-bearing women into fine red paste with a charged attack, and I found it very easy to deal with the boss. I found attacking its center was relatively easy with the arm's wide sweeps, followed by taking out its arms give me access to its weak points on its head, or its torso. I don't really know what to call this. But this was very easy to exploit and quickly took it down. I enter the nightmare of these bird-brained cage heads in a said Murgo's loft. First, I fight Mikolash, host of the nightmare. I mean, what do you want me to say? It's Mikolash. His mannequins cause more trouble by getting stuck in the doorways. But for those that have always hated Mikolash's boss fight, don't worry, this will be very therapeutic. I simply smash his cage head in over and over in this corner during his first phase, and then during the second phase, I did it again! After this, I flushed the Brain of Mensis and claimed the Blood Rock for +10 weaponry. I made a detour to the Brain of Mensis to perform Make Contact, and claimed the maxed out Moon Rune, since I need all the extra blood echoes I can get. Those blood vials aren't going to buy themselves. Now to get back on topic, I head back up to the top of the loft to fight Murgo's wet nurse. I'll be honest, when it comes to fighting the nurse, I don't really have any fancy strategies or plays, I just keep dodging and doing good damage. I guess I'm always just well armed for this fight. Before starting the DLC, there are a few tasks I want to complete. First, I finish Eileen's questline by doing battle with the Bloody Crow of Canehurst. This is one of the hardest NPC fights in all the game, but by utilizing the arm's large radius, it was possible to maintain good distance and land attacks after dodging, which gradually reduced their health bar without being exposed too much to their high damage. Upon defeating the Bloody Crow, Eileen rewards you with the Hunter's Badge, which increases stamina recovery speed. Then I returned to Ebrietas and smashed it into nothing. I don't know if I just needed to be a bit stronger or just needed some time away from it, but it didn't really push back until it did its laser attack, and even then I just stayed close and kept bashing at its torso. It went by a lot smoother this time. Now, let's return to the DLC, starting things off with Ludwig, the Holy Blade. First, let me just say Ludwig as a boss fight, for me, is always a personal favorite, and it's always a lot of fun. Here, it was no different. The use of the Amygdala's Arm in its trick form would allow it to slash through both sides of Ludwig's legs, causing more damage. Then, when fighting his second phase, I kept the arm in its standard form, due to the trick form having that slight arcane damage I mentioned earlier, and Ludwig's second phase becomes heavily resistant to arcane. Luckily, even in this second phase, it had nothing it could do to stop me, and just like that, Ludwig is done, first try. One tragedy I do want to mention is that the little corpse that talks to you in the opening cutscene for Ludwig's boss fight nearly survived. Here towards the end, when Ludwig did his charged AoE attack with the Moonlight Greatsword, it wiped out the little fella, which is kind of sad because I was hoping he'd make it out alive. I guess in the end, I failed. And speaking of failures, let's make our way through the lecture hall and find ourselves at the Living Failures. I don't really have much to say about them. The fight dragged out a little because they're rather beefy here for some reason, but it was business as usual. Let's just move on to Lady Maria. I'll be honest, Lady Maria was tossing me around like I was a ragdoll. Usually I've got a trusty sidearm to parry her into submission, and sure, I've got the auger this time, but its timing is a bit different, and Maria's not going to make landing this thing easy. Several deaths later, I finally started to get into a groove with her. I timed the slams of my weapon just right and would ease my way to her left side, to either parry her from behind or knock her down for a brief moment of peace. Eventually, it all came together, and down she went. And now for the funniest part. As I went back to the Hunter's Dream, I made a revelation that it turns out my weapon has been broken the entire time, making this fight a lot harder than it needs to. Brilliant. I need a nap. After getting tossed around by Maria, I figured I might as well take on the other boss that's always given me a lot of trouble, and that is Lawrence, the first Vicar. Sure enough, he flattened me right away, as usual, and I was worried the DLC was about to completely strong-arm me. But after a nap and a fresh start, it was a whole different ballgame. I don't know if Maria knocked a screw loose or knocked some sense into me, but Lawrence went down easy as I finished him off with a charged attack as he flails around in circles, screaming. Now, on to the DLC's greatest challenge, the Orphan of Cause. After a few bouts, it became very clear that not all the tricks I used on Maria and Lawrence would work so easily here. So while sticking to the left side of it was very crucial, and at the right moments I could set off the auger to parry it from behind, the Orphan is a lot harder to stagger. That meant I couldn't just rhythmically attack it and hope for the best. Its sheer aggressiveness kept me on my toes the entire fight, forced me to pick my moments and punish only when it overexceeded itself. In the end, one well-timed slam from the arm brought this nightmare to its final screeching end. Now for the final weapon of this challenge, the Cost Parasite, your so-called grand prize for finishing the DLC. And it's awful. First, you have to turn yourself into something that looks like a piece of fungi broccoli by giving this blob in the research hall some brain fluid, just so you can even use it properly. Only to find that the moveset is slow, awkward, and about as threatening as a wet piece of spaghetti. And even when you manage to land a hit, the damage is laughably puny. For a weapon with such a great name, the Cost Parasite somehow manages to feel more like a punishment than a reward. So I'll be skipping out on this for now. Before ending the nightmare, I made my final stops. First, I went back to the clinic and finished off Yosefka's imposter, and took her third cord. After that, I went back and checked up on Ariana and took hers as well. Then I quickly descended upon the Chalice dungeons in search of a more appropriate attire. I did my best, okay? I felt this was the closest I could get to looking like a great one. And now I shall face off against the hosts of this nightmare. First up is Gurman, the first hunter. After my earlier fight with Lady Maria, Gurman has nothing new to really push me to my limits. The fight went by quickly, and I usurped him. Now for what I've been waiting for. The great one of the hunter's dream, the moon presence. The fight between us is frantic, and that sudden 1 HP drain is still terrifying. But I've come too far to let this stop me. I press on and punish every opening, and with a final crushing blow from the limbs of another great one, the moon presence falls, and the hunt is over. Now what? Do I just wait to, change forms, or do I find myself as one of those big, scary, great ones? I think this is going to turn out pretty well, and what the heck? Why am I a tiny squid? I did not sign up for this. I did not sign up for this. And so, after finishing the run, let's take a moment to talk about the Amygdala Arm itself. Honestly, this thing is a lot better than I expected. The base form is very simple, just a giant club that hits fast and hard. It staggers most regular enemies, and even against bosses, those charged attacks can really take a chunk out of their health. Now the trick form, that's where the weapon really starts to shine. The sweeping arcs give it a great crowd control. The range lets you punish safely, and you can even clip enemies at weird angles. The transformation attack and 360 spin are especially satisfying. Overall, the Amygdala Arm might look like it's a gimmick weapon, but it's actually a fun, solid, and versatile choice. Definitely one of my favorite trick weapons in this game. With everything said and done, I just want to say thank you to everyone that watched to the end, and I hope you enjoyed this. I have many more ideas, especially for other Souls games, so stay tuned to see more. Share your thoughts down in the comments, and do all the other YouTube things, like not subscribing and then just randomly tripping over the next video. See you around.